The galaxy did not fear humanity when the first colony burned. It applauded. Not with cheers. Not with celebration. But with something far colder. Silence. Across 1,000 star systems, billions of alien eyes watched the live emergency feeds as the human colony of New Carthage disappeared beneath an ocean of white fire. Towering arcology spires collapsed like brittle glass. Orbiting habitats cracked apart, spilling glowing debris into the planet's atmosphere. Vast forests, planted over generations to transform an alien world into a second Earth, vanished beneath expanding rings of plasma. Oceans boiled. Mountains split. Entire cities simply ceased to exist. For 12 endless minutes, every emergency frequency carried the same desperate sounds. Children crying. Pilots begging for evacuation corridors. Medical crews refusing to abandon patients even as their hospitals collapsed around them. Then one by one, every voice dissolved into static. The attack ended as suddenly as it had begun. Above the dying world floated the fleet responsible, the Varkun Dominion. Their colossal warships remained perfectly still, black silhouettes against the burning horizon, as if observing an experiment rather than committing genocide. Not a single distress beacon was answered. Not one rescue craft was permitted to land. Escape pods attempting to flee were vaporized before they crossed orbital boundaries. The official explanation arrived only hours later. A necessary cultural correction. A tragic misunderstanding caused by incompatible civilizations. Words polished until they no longer resembled the horror they described. In the magnificent chambers of the Galactic Concord, where crystal towers stretched toward artificial suns and rivers of liquid light flowed beneath transparent floors, delegates gathered in ceremonial robes to discuss the catastrophe. The chamber itself had witnessed the end of empires, the birth of alliances, and centuries of diplomacy, yet on this day its greatest achievement was finding elegant language to excuse mass murder. The speeches sounded compassionate. The expressions looked sincere. Every representative bowed their heads at precisely the correct moment. Then they moved to the next item on the agenda. Justice could wait. Trade routes could not. Some delegates argued for investigations. Others demanded patience until all perspectives had been considered. Several influential powers insisted that responding too harshly might destabilize peace throughout the galaxy. Stability, they claimed, was worth temporary sacrifice. Temporary. As though millions of human lives had been nothing more than an unfortunate accounting error. On Earth, the broadcasts reached every screen. Families gathered in silent living rooms. Factory workers stopped their machines. Children looked toward their parents, waiting for someone to explain why no one was coming to help. No explanation came. Only names. Endless names. Projected across city skylines, whispered inside churches, displayed on orbital stations, and engraved into digital memorials before many of the bodies had even been found. For 31 days, humanity mourned. No retaliation came. No furious declarations echoed through space. Earth's diplomats attended every council session. They listened. They thanked delegates for their condolences. They accepted every meaningless resolution with perfect composure. The galaxy mistook restraint for surrender. It believed grief had broken humanity. Then, on the 31st day, every human transmission across known space interrupted simultaneously. Merchant vessels halted mid-journey. Military listening posts froze. Deep space observatories received the same encrypted signal. Every communication channel carried a single calm human voice. No anger. No trembling. No hatred. Only absolute certainty. We're done being cultured. For one impossible heartbeat, every network in the galaxy fell silent. Even the stars seemed to stop listening. And somewhere beyond humanity's peaceful reputation, something ancient began to wake. For more than 2 centuries, humanity had become the galaxy's brightest symbol of hope, not because it possessed the largest fleets or the deadliest weapons, but because it chose to build instead of conquer. While ancient empires measured greatness by the number of worlds they ruled, Earth measured its success by the number of lives it could save. Across the Orion expanse, human-built hospitals floated above war-torn planets, restoring entire ecosystems poisoned by centuries of conflict. Gigantic orbital shipyards crafted exploration vessels whose first cargo was never weapons, but seeds, medical equipment, and libraries containing the collective knowledge of Earth. Humanity's banner had become a promise rather than a threat. Wherever it appeared among the stars, famine ended, diseases disappeared, and civilizations found partners instead of overlords. Captain Elena Ward had spent her entire life proving that philosophy could survive in a dangerous galaxy. Standing on the observation deck of the exploration cruiser Horizon Dawn, she watched the blue curve of Earth slowly rotate beneath the ship's transparent hull. Sunlight scattered across the oceans like liquid diamonds, while orbital elevators stretched from the surface into space, carrying thousands of travelers between the planet and its shimmering ring of stations. Beyond them drifted immense habitats shaped like rotating gardens, their forests, lakes, and cities glowing softly against the darkness of space. Countless civilian vessels moved peacefully through designated flight corridors, creating rivers of light that flowed around the planet without fear. It was beautiful. Beautiful enough to make anyone believe humanity had finally escaped its violent past. The Horizon Dawn reflected that dream in every corridor. There were laboratories instead of armories. Greenhouses replaced ammunition storage. Observation lounges overlooked the stars where military command centers might once have stood. Engineers discussed renewable fusion systems while botanists carefully monitored alien plant samples gathered from distant worlds. Linguists practiced newly discovered dialects beside artificial intelligence specialists translating extinct civilizations' archives. Every member of the crew represented a different discipline, yet they all shared one mission. Connect. Heal. Learn. Elena quietly walked through the vessel, exchanging warm smiles with scientists preparing atmospheric drones, physicians calibrating portable surgical units, and diplomats rehearsing speeches for the upcoming summit on Kilos. Many aboard had never fired a weapon outside simulation training. Some had never even seen open warfare. That had always made her proud. Perhaps, she often thought, this was what victory truly looked like, not defeating enemies, but raising generations who no longer expected them. The destination ahead symbolized everything humanity believed in. Kilos was home to dozens of rival civilizations that had spent centuries locked in territorial disputes. Earth had been invited as mediator, carrying proposals for shared technology, environmental restoration, and economic cooperation. If successful, billions of lives could change without a single shot being fired. As the ship accelerated into hyperspace, brilliant streams of distorted starlight wrapped around the vessel like glowing rivers, bathing the bridge in shifting shades of blue and gold. Crew members paused to admire the spectacle, some taking quiet photographs to send home once communications resumed. Laughter echoed through the corridors. Someone played soft piano music over the internal speakers. The atmosphere felt less like a military deployment and more like a family beginning another journey together. Yet Elena couldn't silence the small knot tightening in her chest. For weeks, encrypted intelligence reports had mentioned unusual Varkan fleet movements near the frontier. Supply routes had gone strangely quiet. Long-range probes had vanished without explanation. Every report ended the same way. Insufficient evidence. Continued diplomatic operations, ***. She stared into the endless tunnel of warped starlight ahead, her reflection faintly visible in the observation glass. Let's hope, she whispered to herself, the galaxy still deserves the peace we've spent 200 years building. The stars offered no answer. They simply watched as Horizon Dawn sailed deeper into the darkness, carrying humanity's greatest strength, not its technology, not its ships, but its unwavering belief that even among the coldest stars, understanding was always stronger than fear. It was a beautiful belief. One the galaxy was about to test. No warning sirens echoed across the fleet. No declaration of war interrupted the calm. One heartbeat, the human relief convoy drifted peacefully through the crimson glow of Kilo's outer moon, its formation illuminated by the giant gas planet filling half the sky. The next, space itself erupted into chaos. Captain Elena Ward barely had time to register the flash. The tactical display exploded with crimson icons as dozens became hundreds. Massive Varkan warships emerged from gravitational distortion like predators rising from black water, their obsidian hulls swallowing the light of nearby stars. Before the Horizon Dawn could transmit a diplomatic clearance code, brilliant lances of antimatter fire carved through the leading relief ships. The hospital vessel Mercy of Dawn vanished first. One perfect beam. One blinding flash. Then nothing. The shockwave rolled silently through the vacuum, scattering glowing fragments that spun like dying stars across the battlefield. Bridge alarms screamed. Unknown fleet. We're being targeted. Emergency shields collapsing. The calm corridors that had echoed with laughter only minutes before became a blur of flashing crimson lights and desperate footsteps. Medical teams who had prepared to save lives suddenly found themselves dragging wounded engineers through smoke-filled compartments. Scientists abandoned priceless research to seal ruptured bulkheads with their bare hands. Diplomats who had memorized peace treaties now watched entire civilizations abandon every promise they had ever believed in. Outside, the nightmare only grew worse. Human ships transmitted universal humanitarian codes recognized by every civilized government in the galaxy. Medical mission. NON combatant. Evacuation fleet. The Varkan answered with another barrage. Entire rescue cruisers split apart before their messages had finished broadcasting. Escape pods launched in desperate waves, tiny silver sparks racing through the darkness, carrying children, doctors, and civilians who had never held a weapon in their lives. Varkan fighters pursued them. Not to capture. Not to interrogate. To hunt. Elena stared in frozen disbelief as targeting feeds showed interceptor squadrons weaving effortlessly between drifting debris, picking off escape pods one by one. Every explosion marked another family erased from existence. Every fading distress signal carried voices pleading for mercy that would never come. Then came the children. Across emergency frequencies, terrified young voices called for parents who would never answer. Some begged rescue ships to return. Others whispered goodbye. One little girl simply asked if Earth could still see the stars where she was. The transmission ended in static. Silence settled over the bridge. No one spoke. No one could. Even seasoned officers who had survived frontier disasters stared motionless at their consoles, unable to process the scale of the atrocity unfolding before them. The massacre lasted less than 20 minutes. Its memory would survive for centuries. When the firing finally stopped, thousands of burning wrecks drifted through Kilo's orbit, transforming the peaceful trade corridor into an endless graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. Oxygen clouds shimmered like pale ghosts beneath the crimson light of the moon. Children's toys, medical supplies, family photographs, and shattered pieces of human lives floated together through the void, untouched by gravity and forgotten by mercy. The horror did not end there. Days later, encrypted intelligence recovered from intercepted Concord communications revealed the truth humanity had never imagined. The Galactic Council had known. Several influential governments had received advance warnings that the Varkan Dominion intended to send a message to Earth. Private discussions acknowledged that civilian casualties would likely reach catastrophic levels. Yet intervention was rejected. Some feared damaging trade agreements. Others worried that confronting the Dominion might trigger wider conflict. A few even argued that humanity's commitment to forgiveness made retaliation unlikely. They calculated the odds. Measured the consequences. accepted the losses. Millions of innocent lives reduced to acceptable collateral in the pursuit of political stability. When those classified transmissions reached Earth, no riots erupted. No furious speeches filled the streets. The planet became something far more unsettling. Quiet. Factories stopped producing luxury spacecraft. University research facilities sealed entire wings behind military authorization. Orbital shipyards suspended every civilian contract without explanation. Across continents, doors that had remained locked for generations quietly opened. Humanity did not cry out for revenge. It simply stopped believing that compassion alone could protect the innocent. And somewhere beneath the silence, something long asleep began to breathe again. The first sign that something had changed was not the movement of fleets. It was the disappearance of information. For decades, every intelligence agency in the galaxy had quietly monitored Earth's research networks, diplomatic archives, and industrial output. Human encryption was respected, but never considered impenetrable. The Concord cyber divisions had grown accustomed to reading fragments of humanity's future long before those plans became reality. Then, overnight, everything went dark. Entire databases dissolved behind layers of quantum encryption unlike anything previously recorded. Orbital surveillance satellites lost track of underground facilities that had supposedly remained inactive for centuries. Supply chains vanished into classified logistics routes that simply did not exist on any known star chart. Artificial intelligences tasked with infiltrating human systems returned corrupted, repeating only a single impossible conclusion. No accessible military infrastructure detected. The report confused every analyst. Earth wasn't building an army. Because it already had one. Deep beneath the granite roots of the Himalayas, kilometers below the Antarctic ice, beneath forgotten deserts, ocean trenches, and the ancient lava tubes of Earth's moon, doors that had not opened for generations slowly awakened. Massive blast shields trembled as hydraulic locks disengaged for the first time in over 200 years. Layers of dust drifted through cold white light while forgotten machines came alive one by one. Power flowed. Reactors awakened. Entire underground cities inhaled their first breath since the age of unification. Captain Elena Ward stood in silence as the elevator descended into one of those impossible facilities. No official maps had ever acknowledged its existence. Even as a senior officer, she had believed stories about hidden military vaults were little more than myths preserved from humanity's violent history. She had been wrong. The elevator doors opened onto a chamber so vast it seemed to possess its own horizon. Rows upon rows of dormant starships stretched into darkness, their angular hulls covered beneath protective alloys that had preserved them perfectly through centuries of silence. Gigantic fabrication systems lined cavern walls taller than skyscrapers, while autonomous drones moved like quiet insects, inspecting vessels that had never entered recorded history. Above everything hung a faded inscription engraved into black titanium. Strength hidden is strength preserved. Elena felt the weight of those words settle heavily in her chest. She finally understood. Humanity had never dismantled the weapons that once united Earth after its darkest wars. It had hidden them. Not out of fear. Out of wisdom. An elderly historian waiting beside the command platform noticed the disbelief in her eyes. His uniform bore no military decorations, only the insignia of the Historical Preservation Directorate. "We never forgot what we were," he said quietly. "We simply chose not to become it again." He gestured toward the endless fleet sleeping beneath the mountain. Every generation voted to keep this buried. Every generation hoped the next would never need to see it. His voice grew softer. Until now. Across the galaxy, intercepted intelligence finally uncovered fragments of the same truth. The peaceful image humanity had carefully presented for centuries had never reflected weakness. It reflected discipline. Earth possessed enough industrial capacity to outproduce entire military coalitions. Its civilian fusion reactors could be converted into strategic energy grids within hours. Exploration drives secretly shared identical architectures with military jump technology designed centuries earlier. Even humanity's medical nanotechnology had originated from battlefield survival systems before being transformed into tools for healing. Everything peaceful had been built upon foundations capable of war. Not because humans expected conflict. Because they remembered its cost. Panic spread through the highest levels of the Galactic Concord. Emergency meetings replaced diplomatic ceremonies. Admirals demanded immediate fleet mobilization. Intelligence chiefs admitted, with visible fear, that no one truly knew the extent of Earth's hidden capabilities. They had mistaken silence for simplicity. They had confused mercy with inability. Then humanity released a single classified document to every government in known space. No threats. No declarations. Just one sentence beneath an archive stamp older than the Concorde itself. Arsenal Protocol, activated. In that moment, the galaxy realized the terrible truth. The Massacre had not created a warrior civilization. It had awakened one that had spent 2 centuries proving, every single day, that it was strong enough to choose peace. Now, that choice was gone. The war did not begin with thunder. It began with silence. No triumphant speeches echoed across Earth's networks. No banners of conquest were raised above the cities. Across the solar system, millions simply watched as hidden shipyards released fleets no alien telescope had ever detected. From beneath lunar craters, inside hollowed asteroids, and from orbital docks concealed within the rings of Saturn, enormous warships slipped into the darkness one after another. Their engines burned with a cold blue glow, leaving no sound behind, only shimmering distortions in spacetime as they disappeared into hyperspace. Captain Elena Ward stood at the center of the command bridge aboard the flagship Resolute, the successor to the peaceful Horizon Dawn. The polished observation windows reflected a woman transformed by grief. She no longer wore the insignia of an explorer. Her uniform bore no medals, no decorations, only the silver emblem of Earth engraved over her heart. A reminder. They were not fighting for revenge. They were fighting so no child would ever transmit a final goodbye again. Fleet synchronization complete, the tactical officer reported quietly. All task groups standing by. Elena closed her eyes for one long breath. Then she gave the only order history would remember. Protect the innocent. Not attack. Not destroy. Protect. Thousands of human vessels accelerated as one. Across dozens of light years, the Varkun Dominion's military command suddenly lost contact with its outer defense network. Quantum relays blinked offline in perfect sequence. Orbital sensor arrays went dark before alarms could finish sounding. Navigation satellites folded inward, dismantled by microscopic autonomous drones that reduced weapons into harmless alloys without harming a single civilian structure. Entire battle groups awoke blind. By the time commanders understood what was happening, humanity had already rewritten the battlefield. Stealth frigates emerged from gravitational shadows with impossible precision, disabling planetary shield generators through targeted electromagnetic pulses rather than orbital bombardment. Massive carriers deployed clouds of artificial intelligence drones that infiltrated warships, locking missile bays, freezing reactor controls, and sealing weapon systems from the inside. Every human action displayed terrifying restraint. Cities remained untouched. Civilian transports received safe evacuation corridors. Hospitals were placed under automated protection fields generated by orbiting humanitarian satellites. Humanity wasn't invading worlds. It was surgically removing the ability to wage war. Panic erupted inside the Varkun High Command. For centuries they had believed strength meant overwhelming force. Now they faced an enemy demonstrating something infinitely more frightening. Perfect control. One by one, colossal Varkun flagships drifted powerless through space, surrounded but never destroyed. Their crews expected annihilation. Instead, every command screen flickered to life. A single transmission appeared simultaneously across every vessel. Captain Elena Ward. She stood alone against a backdrop of stars, her voice calm enough to chill every listener. You mistook mercy for weakness. A pause. You were wrong. Behind her, images of New Carthage silently appeared, families, hospitals, children, and the burning colony whose ashes had changed humanity forever. We remember every life. Another pause. But we refuse to become what killed them. The transmission ended with one final sentence. Mercy was never weakness. It was a gift. Moments later, human boarding teams entered disabled Varkun command ships, not as executioners, but as peacekeepers. Wounded enemy soldiers received medical treatment from the very species they had tried to exterminate. Prisoners were fed. Civilians trapped inside military zones were evacuated before any occupation began. The contrast broke something inside the Dominion's surviving commanders. They had prepared for monsters. Instead, they found disciplined guardians carrying the full weight of unimaginable power. Within 72 hours, the Varkun war machine collapsed. Not because every ship had been destroyed. Because every weapon had been rendered meaningless. Across the galaxy, billions watched the impossible unfold. Humanity possessed enough strength to erase civilizations. Instead, it chose precision over vengeance. Justice over hatred. Discipline over rage. And in that choice, the stars finally understood what Earth had been trying to teach them for 200 years. The strongest civilization in the galaxy was never the one capable of winning a war. It was the one powerful enough to stop one without losing its soul. The war ended not with a final explosion, but with an overwhelming silence that settled across the galaxy like the first snowfall after a lifetime of storms. For the first time in centuries, the hyperspace lanes carried no distress calls. No fleets maneuvered for battle. No worlds waited in fear of orbital fire. The stars simply shone, indifferent witnesses to a civilization that had changed forever. At the heart of the Galactic Concord, inside the colossal Hall of Unity, a chamber carved from living crystal and illuminated by an artificial sun suspended beneath a transparent dome, representatives from thousands of species gathered once again. But this time, no one spoke above a whisper. The polished floor still reflected the banners of every member civilization, yet the confidence that had once filled the chamber had vanished. Every delegate remembered the day they had watched humanity mourn in silence. Every delegate remembered choosing comfort over courage. Then the great doors opened. Earth's delegation entered without ceremony. There were no military escorts, no triumphant music, no symbols of conquest. Captain Elena Ward walked at the front beside elderly diplomats who had spent their lives negotiating peace, their expressions calm but forever changed. They wore the same silver insignia over their hearts, a reminder not of victory, but of responsibility. As they crossed the endless chamber, thousands of alien eyes followed them. Some lowered their heads in shame. Others couldn't bring themselves to meet a human gaze at all. Elena could almost hear the echoes of those lost voices from New Carthage, the children, the doctors, the families whose final moments had been debated as political inconvenience. Those memories would never leave her. They weren't supposed to. Without asking permission, the human delegation stopped before the Central Council platform. One by one, they removed their ceremonial robes. The flowing garments, once symbols of diplomacy and trust, were carefully folded and placed upon the crystal floor. The soft sound of fabric touching stone echoed through the silent chamber with astonishing weight. No speeches accompanied the gesture. None were necessary. Every observer understood exactly what it meant. Humanity was not abandoning peace. Humanity was abandoning the illusion that peace could survive without accountability. Elena finally broke the silence. Her voice was steady, carrying effortlessly across the immense hall. We came to this council believing that civilization was defined by its compassion. She paused, looking at the faces surrounding her. We have learned that compassion without courage becomes permission. No one interrupted. No one dared. We will not rule this galaxy. We will not seek revenge. And we will never become the monsters we defeated. Her eyes drifted upward toward the endless stars visible beyond the transparent dome. But neither will we stand beside those who watch innocents die in the name of stability. The word settled over the chamber like gravity itself. When the delegation turned to leave, no guards attempted to stop them. No treaties were signed. No applause followed. Humanity simply walked away from the institution it had spent centuries trying to strengthen. Behind them, the doors closed with a deep, resonant sound that seemed to mark the end of an entire era. In the years that followed, the galaxy slowly transformed. New alliances emerged, not built upon fear or convenience, but upon earned trust and shared responsibility. Worlds once divided by ancient rivalries chose cooperation over complacency. Human explorers returned to the stars, once again carrying medicine, knowledge, and hope, but this time, their peaceful missions traveled alongside quiet strength. Every humanitarian convoy was protected. Every promise was backed by the unwavering resolve to defend it. Peace was no longer a fragile wish. It had become a commitment. Generations later, children from 100 different civilizations would stand beneath classroom star maps and ask why the old Galactic Concord had fallen silent after the Varkan War. Their teachers would smile sadly before pointing toward the small blue world that forever changed the meaning of strength. The galaxy believed humanity became powerful when it awakened its arsenal, they would say. But that isn't true. They were always powerful. The day history changed was the day everyone else finally understood that kindness is not the absence of strength. It is the greatest proof of it. And somewhere beneath the same stars that had witnessed both unimaginable tragedy and impossible hope, humanity continued forward, not seeking to be feared, not asking to be accepted, but quietly proving, one generation after another, that the strongest civilization is the one that never forgets why it chose peace in the first place.